Vikram Chatral is a successful American businessman and hotelier, just like his father. Now, he wasn't interested in living off of his father's owed hotel money like some people are content to do. He wanted to learn the ropes for himself. He started at the very beginning. He was a cashier, a bellhop, he even did hotel laundry. Now, he eventually learned all of the ropes of the industry so he could start his own hotel without needing help from anyone else, which he did, and he's gotten very successful at opening hotels. He was once asked in an interview, "Are you going to let your kids live off of your money, or should they learn the ropes too?" And he said, "Nepotism is always a lose-lose situation." Now, this quotation is exactly what I thought of when I received the question, if Grace Mugabe takes over for her husband after his death, will Zimbabwe continue to stagnate? The answer to this question is sadly yes, because this is just another instance of lose-lose nepotism. We're going to be looking at this through two main points of analysis. One, how Grace Mugabe is not the right person for this job, but two, how there are other economic factors that she won't be able to control that are forcing Zimbabwe's economy to stagnate. Now, first, let's talk about Grace Mugabe herself. We're going to see, one, how she, as an individual, is not qualified for the president, but two, how the economic decisions of her and her husband have done nothing but hurt Zimbabwe. But first, starting with her qualifications. According to Eyewitness News on September 13th, Grace Mugabe has a PhD, which is an impressive feat for anyone, but there are two problems with hers. One, it's in sociology, which is fine and dandy, but might not qualify you to be president of a nation. There's a second problem, though. She earned it in just 2 months after enrolling in her university. And that's with no other academic background on her record. Meaning in 2 months, she went from zero to doctor. This has its own problematic implications. Now, my first thought was, well, her husband has now been president for 8 terms, so maybe she's gotten some on-the-job experience. Sadly, this isn't the case. As Yahoo News said in their article released yesterday, Grace Mugabe has been seen as so disconnected from the office and the issues that it's facing by the public that they don't call her the first lady of Zimbabwe, they call her the first shopper of Zimbabwe. From these things, we can see that Grace Mugabe as an individual is not qualified for this seat. But there are also problems with its economic policies. Specifically, they have a new policy talked about by All Africa in an article released today. The office has just approved the minting of new coins, 1 cent and 5 cent coins, to help bring down the price of commodities in Zimbabwe. This might seem like an interesting solution, and it certainly brings them closer to an American model of economy, but it is uniquely problematic in Zimbabwe, mainly because everyone thinks the idea is dumb. Actually, the Zimbabwe public is afraid of the idea. They view it as a return to the Zimbabwe dollar, which they all blame as the cause for the 2008 to 2009 hyperinflation crisis in Zimbabwe. The plan is reliant on everyone using the coins. A lot. And none of them are going to, because they don't want to support an idea that they think is just going to tank their economy all over again. Now, the second reason that there's problems within the office is given to us in an article released by The Guardian today as well. Specifically, the office has a big budget for luxury spending. Grace Mugabe actually just recently spent over $120,000 on one vacation to Paris by herself. She's not the most thrifty person when it comes to spending money on her government's behalf. Because of these things, one, how she is underqualified as an individual, but two, how the office itself that she's involved in is making poor economic decisions, we can see that if she takes over, it's still just going to be a lose-lose situation. Now, the second point that we're going to talk about are the external factors in Zimbabwe's economy that Grace, or any president for that matter, can't necessarily control for themselves. We're going to talk about two specific industries, tourism and diamonds. Now, tourism is a very important thing to the Zimbabwe economy. Unfortunately, it's having its own problems. Specifically, IOL News reported in an article today that tourism has become completely stagnant. They've seen no growth in the first half of 2014, which is disappointing, especially when you learn that tourism is the industry that Zimbabwe is mainly focused on trying to recover. It's crippling their economy. They're spending all of their recovery efforts on an industry that's giving them no return on investment back. Specifically, this has had damage that's reached beyond the borders of Zimbabwe. Specifically, it's hurt how foreign investors view the intelligence of their economic policy. And on an article released on August 25th by Bulawayo, an economic article magazine from Zimbabwe itself, they said that foreign investor confidence is so low that it itself has become stagnant. They've seen no new foreign investors in Zimbabwe since the start of 2014, which is going to mean its economy will stay stagnant no matter who the president is. Now, the second industry we're going to talk about is diamonds. Specifically, according to BBC News in an article released today, diamonds are one of Zimbabwe's most important exports, and it itself has also been seeing problems lately. specifically because the economy itself is in a general downturn, which means that people don't have as much money for luxury goods, such as diamonds, which are going to be some of the most expensive. But there's also been a plethora of problems that have been plaguing the diamond industry. They've seen worker strikes go on a large scale, which has reduced their overall production. But they've also seen a huge upturn of the amount of mechanical problems that the actual drills have been having to dig up the diamonds, meaning that sites themselves are becoming less productive. And this is right during a transition phase where new mines needed to be found because the old reliable mines have been tapped dry. Which means that the diamond export industry is expected to itself go into a downturn. And if that happens, it's going to drag the rest of the Zimbabwe economy along with it. This is not something that Grace herself would be able to control, or any president. They can't restock the mine with diamonds. Which means that at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to fix the economy. Even if Grace takes over, it's still going to be a lose-lose situation. She's not going to be able to change foreign investors' minds, the tourists are still not going to be coming, and the diamond industry is still going to be experiencing its own problems. So at the end of the day, we can see that if Grace takes over, it's still going to be lose-lose. Zimbabwe's economy is still going to be stagnant. So today, we've looked at the question, if Grace Mugabe takes over for her husband after death, will Zimbabwe continue to stagnate? We've seen that the answer to this question is yes, because this is just another instance of lose-lose nepotism. We've looked at two main examples. One about how Grace is underqualified because she doesn't have the education or the on-the-job training. They make poor economic decisions. And about how the industries in Zimbabwe are also failing, specifically tourism, one of their #1 pillars of the economy, and diamonds, one of their #1 exports. Now, when we look back to Victor Chatwal and how he decided to learn the ropes, hopefully, Grace Mugabe decides to learn the ropes for herself before actually becoming president. I mean, who knows? She learned how to be a doctor in 2 months. Maybe learning how to be president will take her just as long.